We talk about the BTS behind things that we normally take for granted. We talk about the fact that things are not black and white, human behavior is not black and white. There is always context that depends and dictates decision making and iterations. And we often do not see that and tend to judge. And this is what the podcast is about. It's about finding out underlying meanings. It is about science. It is about technology. It's about how people build systems, how people do things, why people do what they do, and the works. And today we have Srinivas Raghavan joining us. Thank you so much, Srinivas. We are going to be talking about. He's currently a consultant, but he is sitting on 10, 12, 14 years of experience in SaaS marketing. Started off as an engineer, a computer science engineer, went on to healthcare and health insurance and things like Mobilium and Gupshup and Qbol, and that's just to name a few of the SaaS companies that he's worked with. Essentially, he went from a techie to being a marketer to marketing SaaS products, and now becoming a consultant and taking people on journeys where taking CMO level decisions and how do you market yourself, how do you market your brand in the age of AI and in 2025. Thank you so much. Welcome to the Mixed Emotions podcast. This is your host, Mihir Oak.
Just to start off with the technical side of things, you went from being a technical computer engineer to doing services for HP and IBM, and then you did marketing, and then you did SaaS marketing, and now you're a consultant. My point is that on the technical side of things, how hands-on does a person, or is he required to be on the coding side or on the technical side? Say, for example, if it's hardware or if it's software, actual coding languages, do you need to know to be able to market that to a customer better? What is the Do you need more jargon? Do you need more technical skills? What is the
Yeah, look, the ideal combination would be somebody who is all extremely deeply knowledgeable about the product and also deeply skilled in things like marketing and sales and other things. But that's a pretty rare combination. But I would suggest that the thing that is required to be a marketer for a technical product is to have the right level of understanding, which is to say that you need to know what is the problem that is being solved, how the solution is put together, at least at a black box kind of level, if you know the various things that go into the picture, and you're able to answer or questions that are fielded, typically the questions that come in. So you can ask yourself those questions and prepare yourself. Take the help of your product teams, engineering teams to understand it. And of course, if it gets very deeply technical, then you will always usually have the support of a solutions engineer or a pre-sales team to help you out. But normally, those kinds of things happen when you're having customer conversations. But for the purposes of crafting a value proposition, figuring out what to write on your website, and things like that, I feel a marketer can gain
pull off?
enough knowledge to do that. Because the thing to remember in marketing is that you're a bridge between what the product can do and what the product can do for a customer, which is to take it, you're a bridge between your company's world and your customer's world. So it will help also sometimes if you're not very deeply immersed in the product, because sometimes you can lose perspective of what exactly is the problem that is being solved in reality on the customer side of things.
No, so that would then mean that marketing does not require as much hands-on. When I say hands-on, I mean going from, like, say, technical to non-technical and climbing that journey versus coming top down from management to it's if you're a part
Yeah,
of a
like I said, it's the right amount. Whatever is that right amount is varies, but I don't think you really need to be a creator of technology in order to be a marketer of technology. But you must have a good level of understanding, the right level of understanding, to make sure that
to
you're
instill confidence
stating
as well,
things.
I guess. I'm
To
guessing.
instill confidence, I always use the example of if you go to a good restaurant and someone is trying to explain the menu to you. And often as customers, we have questions, right? Is this gluten free?
Yeah.
Where do you get this from? Or are your vegetables organic? Or how is this made versus do you use this ingredient? Now, that person, if the person is good and knowledgeable, they would have already anticipated those questions or even learned the menu to a good level. But it's not necessary that they are a chef. It's not necessary that they are sourcers of these products. But they know enough to give you the confidence that
Right.
this is what is being done. And I'm also assuming that's also factually true. So I think a marketer sort of plays those kinds of roles.
Okay. Do you think AI, the way that it is being made and the way that it is implemented, and going forward in the long run, do you think AI can be a potential SaaS killer or a cloud computing killer? Or since personalized AI is coming in, you might not require as much as Google, for instance?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the way search GPT sort of takes out. I think that's the latest thing. I'm personally on a wait list. I haven't tried it out yet.
Yeah.
So I don't think that these engines have made material difference to search volumes or ad revenue. I think if you look at the results,
Yes.
they seem quite steady and promising. And
Yes.
I think the real challenge will come in when the share of search traffic moves away from the established search engines to the more GPT-led search engines. When that happens, and which is why I think there's this frantic movement in the big companies as well that they're sort of scrambling to be ahead of, to catch up in that sense. But until that happens, I think that's the tipping point. Until that happens, I don't think you'll see too much of a change. But I don't think that's too far away from happening. If they get the interface, if they get the product, the default search engine could pretty soon be a GPT-like interface.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Switching to, you've written 5 books and two of them fiction, 3 of them non-fiction. And the filmy manager that I was looking at, you have, it's essentially on it's essentially how movies can teach you a lot of skills on leadership and management and so on. But you also removed a podcast to promote that. I don't know if it's for promotion or for what. And it was a small series back in the day when you had released it. And you spoke about certain scenes. And my question is, what is your state of mind to do this? Because I have not seen anybody doing it in this way, the promotion being it in this way. So, what comes to your mind to, was it a promotion tactic? Or was it just out of interest that you wanted to speak on those things as well, which were not covered in the book?
Yeah, I think it was more of a revival tactic because when the book came out in 2016 or so, podcasting was not yet big.
Yeah.
So we relied more on the traditional channels of promotion like PR.
Yes.
So there were a few news
News,
press
yes.
articles and dailies and all that. But I decided a few years later that why not revive interest in this book, and podcasting had picked up. So I decided to start a podcast on the theme of the book and also go beyond what was written in the book because originally the book was conceived based on Hollywood films, but Indian publishers felt that Bollywood is a better, or Hindi film industry, I know they don't like the term Bollywood. Yeah, Hindi film industry is more apt from finding an audience point of view. But yeah, the whole interest of decoding messages within movies continues to remain.
A lot of
I haven't been.
Yeah. A lot of Instagram pages, if you see, is just about movies circulating small bits, and then they have a write up on things, and they garner 2-3 million followers.
Correct.
And it's a very emotional thing, but then it's different scenes from different movies. And yeah, people follow, people like, and yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because most people don't mind watching a good movie. So in that sense, it's a great frictionless platform for you to try and learn something. Imagine that if everything that we were taught in school was done through arts and entertainment, we would probably be better students.
Yes.
So you take the boredom out of the whole thing. But also, it's a medium that is not designed to be educational. I think we have to keep in mind it's an entertainment medium. So it's always something that you can extract, unless it's a movie like Three Idiots or Tare Zameen Par, which was made with a very specific message in mind. Otherwise, movies are made to entertain. And in entertaining people, they also contain messages which you have to decode that. You have to unearth or extract.
But do you think that with OTT coming to such a with crazy reach, and I may be waiting for a particular movie to come on Netflix rather than going to a cinema theater, do you think that now you wrote a book, then you released a podcast, and videos become so much easy to consume and people love it? Do you think that companies could also look at maybe making movies and putting them on OTT? I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of companies need to start thinking about the way people consume content today. I feel 99% of companies today are stuck in the older way of producing content. That I'll create an ebook, or I'll issue a press release, or I'll put something in PR. I'll put out a newswire and things like that. So today, people are largely there on social platforms, either professional networking platforms or on Instagram and all that. So everyone's doing the doom scrolling. So when you as a brand want to be relevant and seen and heard of, you got to invest in content that is entertaining, because I think a lot of companies don't think their content should be entertaining. I think it should be, in order to capture attention. And yeah, like you said, you can take some of the dollars that you spend, expensive programs that you're running, which are not necessarily giving you ROI. You can pump that into creating your own studio, creating your own in-house media company, where you don't have to create a full-length movie. You can make short films. You can dramatize something that's happening in your customer's life. You can even put a camera into your own office and say that this is how we run our planning meetings. This is how we prepare for a podcast. The whole build in public sort of movement that is taking place. I feel like there's a whole bit of rewiring that is required, and this is what in a small way I try to keep doing on LinkedIn. I keep talking about this a lot. Founder-led marketing, content-led marketing, even for B2B companies. Content in the way that content is consumed today, not in the old-fashioned way, because no one really consumes content like that anymore.
Yeah, but that would then, like, if I have to think from a company point of view to produce a movie, that would mean an additional pillar of expenditure that I would have to create. And then, exactly as you said, rewiring a lot of things, not only in terms of consumption or how people used to consume, but then what content really is, and how do you make it entertaining, and how do you make it and
So, I mean, you don't have to get all the expertise in-house. Even when I started on this journey with Luke, we created a very well-received talk show. It was catering to the HR community, and it was called Close the Loop. So we didn't have the expertise in-house. So you have a really good pool of young creators out there,
right,
who know how distribution works,
right,
who know how content is to be, and they're not from this generation. Probably from your generation, you're a young guy. At least they're not from my generation.
right.
So they're all in their 20s, and there's a lot to learn from them. So I think a lot of marketing teams, corporate brand teams could do well to have some of these people advise them on creating stuff that really resonates, that has an audience. We always like to hear from people that we trust. And the people that we trust, there is no friction in what they say and what we listen, because we gravitate towards them. But to build that trust, you have to create insights in an engaging fashion that people gravitate towards. Even if your subject is technical, even if your subject is, and you have an audience, every subject has an audience. All you need to think is that I'm making this content for this audience, but I'm just going to make it more interesting, and I'm going to make it in a way that they are consuming today.
Right. A lot of thinking and planning may have to go for rewiring. Said, I think, yeah, as you said, I wouldn't call it orthodox, but older companies may find it harder to shift priorities versus younger companies that have lesser SOPs to follow. But tell me one thing, see, point of a business would be to make a profit. And the way you start, that is the most transactional way of putting it out there, that I have something of value, I need you to buy it and give me cash, give me whatever. That's it. And then you can then, as long as money is coming in, then you figure out how you then structurize and then organize and put SOPs in place and so on and so forth. So let's take an assumption that if, like, I'm coming to a longer, it's a monologue, so let's just hear me out. Let's say that the assumption is that the business is not for profit. Like, you don't measure how much money you make, you measure how much impact you have, or the business is just to put out value, or the act is just to put out value. My point is that the way you have been putting out content, like, over and over again over the years, writing books, writing entertaining podcasts, like coming on podcast shows, starting a YouTube channel. By the way, I just learned yesterday about advice and where you should use either. What is your point with all of this? Number one. Number two is, do you ever get imposter syndrome of the fact that there is already somebody out there, or there are like 100 different educational channels in English language? Does that ever pull you down? These thoughts are some creator thoughts that may come to anybody who may want to start doing it because they have an intention of doing it, but they have fear of judgment. And do you also go through that, or what is your procedure? Or, yeah, there are a lot of questions here, so
Yeah, I think the first question was why all of these varied things. I think it's just like there's a creative urge, I would say, that I have. And that creative urge is now in an age when it's becoming easier for people to put something out there if they have. Earlier, it would be, you could write a blog or you could write a book. It was easier to write a blog, tougher to write a book. Even if you write a blog, it's tough to get people to come. And people used to, I remember back in the day, we would write a blog and then send an email blast to our contact database to say that I've written this blog post. So it was like that, and then social media helped a little bit. But now with all the tools at one's disposal, it's easier. So someone like me who has a lot to say, somehow, I don't know, I have a few things that I have some thoughts, some things that I want to share. And I know that somewhere out there is an audience, big or small, that might benefit from it, which is why I keep trying to do these things. So this YouTube channel is the more recent one. And also it was a way for me to face the camera a lot more and get more comfortable in front of the camera, because I'm somebody who talks about founder-led marketing and video and how people should be in front of video. I just wanted to make sure that I was drinking the Kool-Aid and that I'm comfortable. So I was able to go fight a bit of that with the podcast that I did. Ideally, the Loop founder should have been on that, but I think they were really caught up in building the company. So they said, why don't you become the host? So I faced the camera in that sense for the first time in my career. But it's something that I want to work on. So that's to your why question. So there's like a bunch of interests that I have, a bunch of things that I want to do. And these tools today give me the opportunity to do that. The second question is imposter syndrome. I think that's there all the time, because and one has to fight it in order to allow the creative process to. I think I must have at least 3 or 4 books that I've started, but I have not gone beyond a certain stage because I keep wondering whether it's good enough, whether people are going to like it, and so on. Even with my YouTube channel, I mean, I keep looking at the numbers, and some types of posts they do really well. Others, which you think should do well, don't do well, and you're constantly asking yourself that. So it's not about how many other channels are there. There's always going to be someone or the other doing it. It's about whether you can be authentic in the way you deliver it, whether you can find your own voice, and which will find its own audience at some point of time. And you also have your place along with others who have their place. So that's really the whole creator mindset, I feel, because there are multiple people doing the same thing, but you need to have an authentic, like for example, for every Ranveer Alabadia, you have a Raj Shamani.
Yeah.
For every Raj Shamani, you have someone. Right now, like you have a Cyrus Brocha who's also gotten into it. So everybody, but they're all a little different. The kind of questions that they ask are different. There are nuances. So that's how they're able to all survive. So that's the way to deal with it, honestly. But yeah, the imposter syndrome is real. And from what I've been hearing, the other day I watched an interview of Anupama Chopra, the film critic,
Yeah.
who started Film Companion. She confessed to having that. Harsha Bogle, the great cricket commentator, went on. He delivered a lecture at IIM Ahmedabad. He confessed to having it. So if they have it, then who are we? Right? We will also have it. But you have to just try and put it aside and just focus on the creation process.
So what you're saying is that do not worry about the outcome and worry only about your intent, and how you can do.
Yeah, I think you've got to keep yourself honest as well. Like sometimes if the outcome is not there, let's say no one is responding to your content, even though you have put it out a few times, then okay, you know that something's not right. So again, you go back into saying, can I do something different? Which is, can I try a different angle? Can I try a different hook?
Yeah.
So always be in that space of manipulating the inputs.
Yeah.
And then with the outcome already saying that, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to create a successful, a well-followed channel. But I'm now going to focus and I'm going to spend a few years on just building the blocks, sometimes ripping it out and rebuilding it. And over a period of time, I always feel that good content has an audience, big or small. They'll find an audience.
Yeah, what is gold will stay gold. But getting there would be, again,
it takes patience.
Yes.
It takes. I just finished. I recorded my 200th short for my channel, and it was 4-5 months ago that I started.
Yeah.
And honestly, okay, I've got like a few hundred subscribers, and it's growing. Yeah, I would want it to be a few 100,000.
Yeah. It's growing. Yeah, I saw it's growing pretty well, I would say.
Yeah. So it's a question of staying the course and just being consistent, listening, researching, and then trying to keep your own voice authentic. So I've started using WhatsApp as a distribution channel as well.
Yes.
A lot of people don't do that. So I've got 2,000 to 3,000 contacts who see that. Now, these are people from all walks of life who've been connected to me in some shape or form over the last 20, 30 years. So it's a good way. So it's a small audience, but it's a very relevant audience.
Right.
These are old colleagues, current colleagues, friends, family, people that I might have just brushed past professionally. It's an audience that knows me, but this kind of stuff also keeps me connected with them.
And yeah, you can't be relevant to everybody. That is the outcome. That is an insight on the outcome. But as long as you're relevant to somebody, I guess anything better than zero is good enough.
You have to find your own way. You have to keep. It's like the water finding its own way through things. So you have to find your own way, your own unique. So now I'm trying to see if I can take some of these videos and put them on LinkedIn, for example, because we as professionals also need to write and communicate and use proper English. So maybe there's an audience there. That'll be my next experiment. So it's just different ways. You just have to keep trying. Of course, the objective is to become an established channel with a good followership.
Yeah.
But in order to get there, you have to keep going through the hoops. And as you're going through the hoops, just focus on the hoops. Don't worry about that outcome which you want to achieve.
Yeah. And so everybody goes through it. I don't think there is any solution to that, but what you can work on is the building and the patience and the so on and so forth. What do you think is the future of podcasting? Sorry, continue, then I'll ask my next.
No, go for it. Finish your question. Yeah.
No, what I mean by podcasting, I mean that during the pandemic, we saw like everybody starting a podcast of their own. Like it had become like Instagram had this not another podcast that I want to see, and then it dropped. And now I am starting to see a lot of uptick again with brands going on podcasts as a digital marketing route. Which is not only website, it has to be a website. I had said that earlier also. LinkedIn, I'm sure LinkedIn, if they've started with videos, they would come out with a podcast section as well. Maybe, who knows? But what is it like now? It shouldn't be that. What I would though assume is that as we become more digitally native, then all of these things, then there'll be other ways of interaction with your audience and so on and so forth. But what is the like? Yeah, what is the future of it? What next after a podcast? Do you have live shows? Do you have like how would you take it from there?
No, I think podcasting, I would say, is just in its early stages of growth. I think there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stories that need to be unearthed. What we are seeing is a few celebrity-led or some podcasters who become celebrities, and now they're starting to get people from different walks of life. But those people are also in that sense celebrities.
Yeah.
But there's a ton of stories out there that have yet to be unearthed. So I think podcasting has a very bright future. I'm waiting to see a lot of regional language podcasts break through as well. I don't see many of them. I like Lalan Talk. Of course, that's a Hindi podcast, but I'm waiting to see a lot of regional podcasts come through as well. And of course, I think it's going to be more of video podcast. I think people like to watch the video. I don't know if people still plug into the audio thing unless you're a runner or unless you're
a gymnast
plugging into it,
or
you have a long drive. Maybe. Even then, you would rather watch the YouTube version of it than the actual audio version of it. So I think it'll be more of YouTube. Regarding live, possibly, but I think it'll be more of the more established podcasters who might start a few live events. But even then, I think Howard Stern has done a great job with that. I think he's the ultimate talk show host who can now be called the world's first podcaster, because Howard Stern's show has been on air since the 70s, but it has its own, and it comes on Sirius XM in the US. But now it's found its own audience because they record all the podcasts are recorded. Right. And now they've started releasing those videos on YouTube. So they've got a great following. So only these established guys with the followership can probably do more live stuff. But otherwise, I think there's still a lot to be unearthed on the podcast front. And corporate though has not even started.
Yes.
So when that starts, you'll see functional podcast like finance or supply chain, deep dive into content, deep dive into SEO. I'm just waiting for those things to come up. And of course, the technical guys, right? The coders, the builders, the programmers. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done.
Do you think that a podcast should necessarily be about a particular niche, or it could go Joe Rogan style any way?
Yeah, I think if you really want to distribute it across the board, then yeah, it has to have some universal appeal. But I think we need more of the niche podcasts. I think there are quite a few of the general ones now, but we need people to start picking up the niche. I think I saw one on YouTube called The English Nut. The English Nut, I came upon an interview of his with Shashi Tharoor, and I went into his channel. And so he's gone deep into poetry and English poetry, English language. He interviews a lot of writers and things like that. So that's a niche podcast, and that's where I think a lot of new podcasts can come through and break through.
So it's like you are essentially creating a loyal subscriber base if you start niche.
Yeah.
And if it's not niche, then you'll get a few likes. Few more.
Yeah, if it's not niche, then yeah. Otherwise, then that has to you have to pick on some universal emotion, universal interest, universal emotion. But that you're always competing with many other established players.
Correct. So then you have to really make a choice between. Yeah. I was thinking about this entire thing for myself as well. Should I niche down into a particular subject, or should I go? Embedded engineering has its own thing, and then we would talk about the niches of engineering, and there's so much to talk about, and we do it on the engineering, the hardware, software, coders, this, that, all of that. The point is that interests in general are not, if you go back to school and you're asked like in the 5th, 6th standard, 7th standard, what is your favorite subject? It is normally the teacher who teaches you the best, or the teacher who you like the most because you really understand their class, is what your interest depends on. which in my opinion would mean that it really does not matter what your interest is as long as it is presented to you in a way that you understand, which would maybe take longer podcast level in terms of, or I don't know, you just ride that into, in my opinion, like interests would be a rainbow of, you can like hiking, you can like golf, you can like playing video games, and you can be a good coder, and you can want to maybe bake on the weekends. So should you, like, would you want to cater to all of those, or would you want to niche down into baking only?
See, sometimes your niche, you can also abstract your niche into something a little bit more general. So, for example, let's say business writing can be abstracted into English and communication in general.
Right.
Engineering can be abstracted into building
Yes.
things
Yes.
in general, right? If you see a lot of the entrepreneurs or the venture ecosystem, they call startup or all in, all those big podcasts, they've all come from this background of having started companies, but they all talk in the universal lingo of starting anything, right? Even if you want to start on your own.
Right.
So you can abstract something which is more general from your niche as well. So if you have a desire to reach out to a broader audience, then if you're an engineering company, then you can really create a podcast on how to build things, how to build systems, how to build frameworks. You're builders, right? And that's the thing that you appeal to. That's more universal. So that's one way to do it.
Yeah. So it's basically more, it's a figuring out kind of a game, and you should not, you could stick to one niche, maybe that could be easy. It doesn't matter, like there's like a plethora of content that you could create for that niche. It's not like you're ever going to run out of content to create. But that should not be the limiting factor if you want to cater to a broader set of audiences. You could it's a
it's about how well you abstract it and how credible you can come across. If people can piece it together that okay, there's an engineering company talking about building things, then that fits right in, right? It fits into a person's
correct.
But if you're an engineering company trying to talk about something else, some very different field, then people will be like, okay, I don't know why it doesn't sound reliable.
So maybe not for companies, but for individuals could be a good idea. Or maybe not.
For individuals, 100%. So you can start with a niche and then you can abstract it to something generic, or even do the homework of figuring out what you're good at. And then derive something universal. Like this whole English thing was not an English lit grad or any such thing, right? But it started off as content based, but I thought content is very niche-y, so what would be more generic? So the language is more generic. So English is more generic. Words, grammar, this is more generic. And then slowly you see an audience that is different types, right? There are people who don't know the language, they're trying to learn the language, and they are picking up on these things.
Right.
There are people who know it, but they don't know the nuances. They're also responding to it. But then there are people whose native, like yesterday somebody pinged me on YouTube to say, I'm from Vietnam and I'm liking your content. So I thought, okay, that's wonderful to hear. So again, for them, English is not their first language, but they're a very tourism heavy country. So I'm sure they want to learn. So if you're trying, you will find people that you will eventually end up helping.
For example, I can give you an example of this one Instagram page. I'm not sure I recollect the name, but there's this one girl who comes and she teaches people about sign language, and she'll do one sign every day, and then she'll do a recap at the end of the week. And it's garnered crazy, like even I started following it when I started learning about it, and it's pretty cool actually to think about it, and just to put it out there, and then people start following you because they have varied interests. Now not everybody will follow you, maybe your for support systems are there, but it is there, like if you are there to add value, and if you are authentic enough, I would say that then That's the point, right? Everything adds value. Then how you sell it, and if you're patient with it, as you said, it will see fruit, but it will take its own due course of time.
Yeah, that's right. And you've got to keep learning, right? I use YouTube Studio and they have a lot of content recommendations. Not all of them are relevant to you. But like in my channel, there's so many keywords, like 50 opposite words, 50 synonyms. I'm like, why would I make a video about 50 words?
Yeah.
I don't take all of it. And
Yeah.
some of it, I just do it for the fun of it. Like the other day, YouTube told me that my highest performing video is favorite ka spelling kya hai. And I knew that I took it from a keyword recommendation because it was being searched a lot. And while making it, I thought, how ridiculous. Why would I make a video on what is the spelling of favorite? But it's a mix of things. You also have to look out and see what tools are available to you. How can you growth hack it? Like earlier, I would say you're using this word. Instead of that, use this word. And my caption used to be that, use this instead of this, right? And it got whatever views it got. And then I was watching a video on YouTube on optimizing your titles. And someone said that the first part of your title should be, what does someone get if they watch your video? So I thought to myself, why would someone replace a simpler word with a more complex word? Because they want to sound smart. If with good language, you sound smart, you sound more intelligent. So then I started using the hook saying sound smarter. Replace this with this. And then the average number of views nearly doubled, 2.5 times. So now that is something that you have to keep doing. Even if you have a small follower, a niche follower base, if you keep repeating without trying things, you will not be able to breach a threshold. So that's the example I wanted to do. And that works everywhere. Experiment, try different things, see what sticks.
How much would you cater to human behavior to solve most of your problems, if not all?
Problems in which space?
To sell, essentially. To put it on a very broad term, it is that in the end, it is all about communication, the way you communicate and so on. And as you mentioned right now as well, the example that you gave, I would assume that you, like, from your point of view, you've put out a statement that you thought would work. And then you said, ki, okay, fair enough. What if I am consuming some particular content, what is it in my interest that I would get from watching your video? Which means that you have to really hack into somebody else's psyche in terms of what makes them tick, and then come back and then cater to them in terms of how you can sell the same content, but in so it's all human behavior, you understanding what people do, the nudges. As you said, even growth hacking is essentially that only. But do you first become a perfectionist in human behavior, or do you start first and then you become? It's always a. Yeah.
I feel the subject of psychology should be taught in whichever stream of
in philosophy as well. I would add philosophy to
and
that.
Philosophy.
Yeah.
Probably philosophy is not everyone can relate to that, but at least psychology. So philosophy definitely, because it just gives you perspective to see things differently, and you start appreciating how different people view the world. Not everyone views the world the same way, but psychology definitely. And I think more people in corporate should try and understand human behavior, because ultimately what the modern social platforms have told us is that it's a huge manipulation game that's taking place out there, right? Platforms are being created to keep you hooked on. Doom scrolling happens because someone has hacked into that dopamine producing part of your brain. Even the content that is promoted, the content that goes viral, everything is algorithmic today. In that sense, people want you to get hooked onto whichever platform. So they are also trying to understand people. And even in the world of selling, even in the world of finding your customers, you will find that most customers, whatever their title, whatever their level in the organization, they have the same basic aspirations, which is they want to look good. They want to be seen as being successful. They want to be seen as being smart.
Maslow's pyramid stays consistent.
I'm not even Maslow. It's like the basic level.
Normal state,
Normal status. So what do I want to achieve is I want people to respect me. I want people to think of me as being a smart person. I want people to think that I'm capable of doing this and that. So people have that same motivation, and they are going to back vendors who are going to make them look good.
Yeah.
They're going to stay away from people who are going to make them look bad. So now that you know that, how are you going to biohack into their brain as a company and say that I'm the one
Yeah.
that that you should take in with you on your journey, and I can give you that boost.
Yeah.
So it sounds, and at times it probably doesn't sound authentic, but that's the world we live in, and that's the way it's always been. So understanding your buyer is not like some mechanistic device. Your buyer is a human being and B2B buyers, people have said, oh, B2B buyers are rational, logical. B2C buyers are emotional. No, B2B buyers are also emotional. They also have the same kind of thought process because they are also consumers. And it's just that they sit behind, they're signing contracts for
Yes.
hundreds of people instead of only for themselves. So the brands that are able to, I don't know if too many have done it, but it's definitely worth exploring. And content is one way to do that.
Because I was going to come to the B2B versus B2C aspect of behaviorally growth hacking people. And the purchase department that comes in B2B is essentially put in place so that you do not influence.
Yes.
So B2B would then become really hard. So even if people are consuming your content, how do you break through the B2B wall of the purchase department? Even if you say, yes, I agree that they're all people and you're selling to people, and even if you're nice to them and you're good friends, your budget is going to still come in the way, and they're still going to look for a cheaper option. What would you suggest be good tactics to growth hack B2B?
So I think B2B, the good part about B2B is that it's a buying center that always takes the decision. Yeah. So you have those roles established, right? The distributor, the influencer, the gatekeeper, so on and so forth. So you've got to understand the dynamics of decision making. So in a lot of companies, what happens is even if all these players are there, ultimately it's the founder or the proprietor who has the ultimate say.
Correct.
So I've seen this, like I spent a couple of years in InsurTech. A lot of potential customers were startup founders, and the companies that had the best relationships with the founders, they were the ones who scored the deals, even though let's say their claims processing was messed up and whatever, it didn't matter. That relationship made a difference. So if you leave out purchasing and if you look at all the other aspects, there is a way to nurture all of those personas so that they at least know who you are. And you can maybe divide them into the more emotional and rational side of things, maybe purchase and finance on more on the rational side.
Yeah.
Maybe the other people, depending on whatever your product is, are a mix of rational and emotional. And your champion, whoever it is, probably is, I want this person, this vendor in my organization. So you have to understand that and then know, okay, imagine they're all sitting across an imaginary table, at least 70-80% of them should be batting for you.
Yes.
But even then, there are certain things like certain products where insurance, for example, it's a really cutthroat business. Even if somebody is 1 lakh cheaper than you, whatever, 50,000 cheaper than you, if the company is, I'm going to only give it to L1 and no one can override, then that becomes a reality, whatever you may do. Then you go back and you try next year. But in most companies, I feel like if you have the buying center mapped out properly and they are aware of you, they value you, they see you in a neutral to positive light, then you have a better chance of overcoming the hardcore rational side of the buying center.
Yeah. Makes sense. It's still a process, but I would say it's the same process that you would follow.
There's no getting around it, right? No one's going to bypass purchase and say, okay, just give it to them. Even by any sort of company today, at least we'll get 2 quotes for whatever they want. So there's no getting around it.
Yeah, makes sense. How do you manage your time in terms of the things that you want to do and the things that essentially how do you manage your impulses is the question, since you want to do so much, and now that you're an independent consultant, you would have more time on your plate. I don't know. But back in the day when you were working and you were also writing books, and also how do you do the side hustle and the main hustle, and you have creative tendencies to put all of it out, and then there are regrets of maybe not putting shit out, or how do you manage emotions, and how do you manage impulses, and how do you manage your time around all of that?
Not very well, honestly, because there's so much vying for your attention, and I am always grateful that I have, to some degree, some abilities. I also have a couple of musical passions as well. I'm a drummer and a bass guitarist as well. So there's like a basket of things to choose from, and I've tried doing all of it every day. I think even too much of pleasurable activities also can stress you out. So I try not to do that. So I go through seasons. Like right now is the season of the channel and building the channel, being in front of the camera. That's my fancy. But maybe a couple of months down the line, I could go back to my music and go back to practicing, go back to things. Otherwise, it's hard to do everything
At the same
in
time.
one shot at the same time. So I usually keep one thing which is core, and I'm very happy doing it at that point in time. And then that changes as the season changes. I might not post on my channel for a month, but I might be just practicing more on my instrument or doing something else. Yeah, as a consultant, I would say, honestly, I don't think I have less time. But it's just that when you work for yourself, you're constantly trying to do more. I think that's probably the natural thing. You're trying to maximize, because kind of time is money. Kind of thing
Optimize on where you can fuel. Yeah. Okay. When can we expect your next book? And which?
I've started writing a book on my experiences in working for startups, because I realized that there are lots of books on starting companies, being an entrepreneur, being a founder.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's any book on working in a startup. So I think that's a niche which I want to. And a lot of us work in small and growing companies, and they are very different animals as compared to larger companies. So I want to try and write a book. I've started.
Yeah. Okay. And you're doing a PhD right now, which would mean that are you currently pursuing it?
I'm pursuing it, and I have a couple more years to go to finish that. So I'm at the stage where I've created the proposal, the actual thesis proposal, and I'm on the verge of presenting that. And after that, the actual research work.
What is it on?
So it's about the integration of sales and marketing under a common leader.
Okay.
And this is largely in B2B companies. What I've observed is that these two teams, they are very different in the DNA point of view, and integrating them has always been a challenge. So there's a new kind of leader, the Chief Growth Officer. You would have seen that title quite a bit. So it's mushrooming in recent days. So there's not much research on that phenomenon in the world of publishing and research. So that is the area that I'm doubling down to see why would someone appoint a CGO, and how does it work for a smaller company versus a larger company? Does it solve the problem of integration?
Okay.
Or it doesn't? So that's what I'm focusing.
What is the PhD in?
It's in marketing.
Wow, I didn't know you could get a PhD in marketing.
You have PhD in management, so it's been around for a while.
Okay. Do you plan to teach as well after?
I have been teaching. I teach a course at Dayanand Sagar University in Bangalore. I teach an EMBA program and currently I'm teaching strategy. So I've taught in the past as well. So yeah, that's another thing.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I missed that out. Okay. Do you think selling has become easier now since that we've become so digitally native and we have more metrics to use and we have more, I don't know, our reach is so much better with platforms. Do you think it is easier for me to get customers on board than it was before? Because before I had to personally go from A to B and present myself, and then the metrics then change and evolve. So do you think that relationships were better earlier than today, or do you think it is easier to acquire customers now because our reach has increased, but we're not really sure about the relationships?
I think the top of funnel has become easier,
Yeah.
or the early stage of the pipeline has become easier because people are more than happy to take a demo call. And
Yeah.
you don't have to run around the country.
Yeah.
But I think once someone says, okay, I'll invite you to pitch to me and I'm going to evaluate your solution, then from that point onwards, I don't think it's become any easier. And with all the data and the metrics, you still have to contend with perception and how you're doing versus competitors. Price hasn't gone away.
Yeah.
Haggling for price. So I don't think there's lots of those are universal things. Just like human emotions, human behavior, selling is also one of those fundamental human behaviors, as is buying and selling are. So they don't really fundamentally change, but some aspects become easier, but the core of it remains the same. You still have to, like someone, a sales leader once told me, selling begins when the customer says no or the customer is not sure. That's when you really start selling. When someone says, yeah, there's no need to sell. Right? Somebody goes and today in the era of product-led growth, someone goes to your website and buys a plan, onboards them, will start using. There's no selling there. Correct. The product is selling itself. There's no friction. But if someone has a question, can I talk to someone? Can someone call me? Can I have this question? Then that's when you start selling. So that hasn't gone away.
And that will never go away.
I don't think so.
Yeah. And if that goes away, then I guess there is, how will that go away? But it is very cool to see that you're doing a lot of things on the content side and you're putting it all out, and I understood now how you do it. But very, very cool to see that you can tap into different channels and ways of putting it out if you're a creative person, if you want to. And I guess more and more we're seeing that people do want to hone in on their creative side of, or I don't know, I'm not sure of the research yet. But we can see a lot of pages being formed. People have pages with 10 posts, which is their alter ego. And then, because that happens because they don't want a judgment from 500 people that are following them. And then they'll create another one. And then, so the creative thing is there as an interest in mostly everybody. And everybody may want to do something, but it's cool to see that people are doing something. It's just that how impactful, how beneficial, do you have a vision for it? Do you have a purpose for it? People's belief is that if it is not my intention, then I don't mind if I don't make money out of it. If it's just my interest, that's the naive, I would not call it naive, that's the innocent way of looking at, of entitlement. I would think about it. Yeah, but it was insanely amazing talking to you. If you have any questions for me, you can please feel free to ask. But
I enjoyed your questions. I think I haven't answered these questions in a while or ever. I think so. They made me think a little bit. Give you the questions were really good, I must say.
No, I actually found you from Abhinav Arora's podcast, and also on LinkedIn. You put out a lot of interesting, and I don't know, more people should engage with your content in the sense that it makes a lot of sense, like the founder-led marketing that you are pursuing on. I have a lot of friends as well who have their own companies, and most of them are going through that route as well, coming in front of the camera, putting on video, showing, like talking about their processes, their failures. Less video, more images and more text. But it is, I'm just seeing now, like that has now, it has galvanized my field in the sense that I only see that. So now I'm saying that, is it too much? If everybody started doing it, what next? For that is one. And second is, should we start giving a podcast to every marketing person out there so that they can then go ahead and
yeah, I mean, look, that is it, but you have to do it. You have to create that narrative. You have to hold the conversation. Yes. Because I've seen some podcasts, like a guest who came on my show. I saw him on another show, and the host was so stiff and so rigid. It was almost like, I have 5 questions to ask you. Yes, tell me about your career.
Oh, and, like that.
This guy was doing his best to be normal, but the person asking the question was, it was more like Q&A.
It was not authentic. You would say that it was not. Yeah. You need.
So you can give everyone a podcast. They just need to learn the trick of the trade. It's not hard to learn.
Yeah, exactly. I would assume it's only conversation, but
But yeah, there are some things to it. There are some things to, like, for example, I was trained on how to write and perform the hook. The hook is very important.
Yeah.
The first 20, 30 seconds is very important. So that's the skill that you need to learn. Sometimes you need to coach your guests on talking about examples, anecdotes. Take a contrarian view. If you have a contrarian view on something, take a contrarian view. Because that's the kind of stuff that people will latch on.
Yes.
Okay, this is something.
The latching on to the point is you have to get people to as you said, the hook. That's exactly hacking human behavior is that only, right? Like you
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, like, you asked me the question, right? Is sales getting any easier? If I told you, yeah, technology is transforming sales, yeah, everybody is saying that. But I believe what I said. But if I said that some things never change, right? No matter how much technology you throw. So that's a slightly contrarian view to what people might say. People might latch on to that. So you have to get your guests to be authentic and to start thinking on and talking on those things.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think it's a good movement. I hope it picks up more pace, especially in corporate.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's it. So thank you so much, Srinivas.
Thank you so much
for your time. This is a working weekday, and it's so good to have you give me so many insights on how we can take things and also think about a few things on the creative side of things and how to manage time and emotions and the world and what to make of it. Yeah.
I hope your audience finds it useful. That's all I can hope for.
Let's hope. See, if I found it useful, it's already more than zero. I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for tuning in, you guys. If you like this, then you can hit the like button. The algorithm likes it, gives me more views, and maybe I can contemplate on keeping this channel for free for you to see. If you hit the subscribe button, the algorithm likes that as well. But unlike the like button, this is more useful because you'd be actually notified by every time we do drop a video on this channel. If you have any complaints regarding the content that we drop or the questions that we ask or you want to give us any suggestions with questions or people that you want us to interview, we have added a feedback form in the description. You are very welcome to fill that up and let me know. If you hated this content and you do not want to see my face ever again and do not want to share it with anybody and do not want to refer this kind of content with anyone, then until you do tune in to my next episode or my last episode, or you do tune in, I would like to wish you in Truman Burbank's very own words, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Cheers.